Welcome to the Executive Coach podcast. And this podcast is for you if you're a high achieving professional and you want to stop just ticking boxes and start creating spacious success. Today, we're talking about that uncomfortable feeling when you're working really hard, you're doing all the right things, showing up, delivering, sometimes even exceeding your goals, and yet somehow you still feel like you're behind. Maybe others are being put forward for the next promotion, or somebody's landed a board role, or you've just got onto LinkedIn and seen what everybody's up to. And it's not that you're underperforming or messing up, but something still feels off. And that impacts your mood and how you're seeing yourself and seeing the world. And so in this episode, I'm going to talk about 3 reasons why this happens and what are the things that can really change this for you and make this a much more constructive space for you to be in. So, the first reason that we often feel behind is because we're not working from a strong personal vision. We don't have our own clear sense of what we're building towards. And then it's so easy to get pulled into other people's plans. You see somebody announcing that they're pivoting into portfolio work, or you see somebody else really actively investing into their personal brand online. Another person's managing to do triathlons or get featured in the FT. And before you've even had time to think about all this, you're wondering, should I be doing this too? Or you're getting annoyed by what you're seeing. Whereas when you have a vision, you've taken that time to articulate what really excites you. And yes, part of articulating that personal vision is about seeing what does spark some envy in you. That's one of the exercises that I take my vision builders through. But instead of those scattered hits of comparison and competitiveness, we've actually created something that excites you and speaks to who you are as an individual and goes much deeper than those surface level comparisons. Because unless it really does speak to your own personal vision, it's not relevant. And when you see things in the world that actually speak to your own vision, they become much more like fuel than a distraction. You might see something that somebody else is doing and realize, actually, yeah, that is something that I really care about. And that will give you ideas. But because you're not in this sort of hyper alert comparison mode, you can be much more discerning about what really matters to you when you see other people achieving things. And sometimes you can just be happy for them and move on. And other times you can go, oh, you know what, that's really struck me quite deeply. And I realize it's because it does speak to my vision. And so I'm going to be able to use that as inspiration now going forward and be really happy for what they're doing. So you're being able to absorb from a much more grounded place, not from a place of noisy panic amidst all of the different signals that are being sent to us. So that first reason why we can feel behind is because we are doing that kind of senseless comparison because we don't have our own strong vision. The second one, I'm going to use a gardening metaphor here, so bear with me. We're probably trying to do too many things and be good at too many things. And this is definitely something that I see in my high achievers. I was recently trying to rescue a plant that was basically dying. It had dried out in the pot. And what was the first thing that I needed to do to save that plant? First thing I needed to do was cut it back. I followed the gardening instructions from ChatGPT and I got rid of anything that wasn't healthy all the way back to where it was healthy again. And I was shocked that within a couple of days, new green shoots started sprouting without having repotted it, just by cutting back all of that extra noise and energy that it was having to fuel. It was able to start focusing on what was most important, and that was actually growing brand new green shoots. And so I love this metaphor that often we become, if we haven't been pruning back, if we haven't been taking care, that we can end up trying to do too many things badly. And instead, when we take the time to take stock and cut back, we can deliver our energy to the things that matter most to us. And so, what this sometimes requires is being strategically bad at things. This could be the messy kitchen. This could be specific things at work that you don't need to prove yourself in. This could be saying, actually, you're the detail person. I'm really good at the big picture stuff. So, figuring out where your strengths are and then really allowing yourself to be strategically bad at things, which is something that my high achievers really do struggle with. I've given examples before in the podcast of High achieving friends, even when I've told them some of the stuff that I'm outsourcing, they're like, oh, yeah, but that's easy. You could do that. You could do that so much better than they've done it. And that's really not the point. I did an episode about capacity versus capability. And yes, just because you have capability in things doesn't mean that you need to do them. Doesn't mean that you have the capacity. Actually, we need to really protect our capacity for the things that matter the most so that we don't feel behind in all the thousands of things we're trying to do and we can really focus it on just a few. So that's the second one. You might be like that plant trying to push out nutrients and water to too many different things, spreading yourself thin, drying out, and actually you really need a moment to take stock and prune back. The third thing that I wanted to talk about was the shoulds. And so you may have heard this before from coaches, but coaches have a thing about the word should. They don't want to hear that word too often because should can feel like an obligation. I should be applying for board roles. I should be speaking more. I should have a bigger online presence by now. And often those shoulds are not coming directly from you. They're coming from the culture around you or from society, peers, maybe your past self, what your past self was aiming for. One client recently told me that she felt like everyone at her level was now on a board and it was making her feel like she was missing something. But when we did that work of realizing what actually mattered to her, she didn't want a board role. She liked the meaningful work that she was doing, and she was doing some hands-on stuff with a local charity. And that was much more meaningful to her, especially because her day job was knowledge work. So she was at an office desk. So she hadn't really stopped to question what really lit her up and what she was being drawn to. So that low level comparison pressure just kept sitting there. Another client was finding it hard to go online. She said she kept seeing others going on LinkedIn and promoting themselves and positioning themselves. And she was getting, frankly, quite annoyed by it all. But when we dug a little deeper, there were two things going on. One was that she hadn't actually clarified what it was that she wanted to share. So she felt this sort of pressure, but she didn't really know what she was meant to do with it. When she saw other people so clear on what it was that they wanted to do, again, she felt like she was lacking because she didn't have that clarity. So once we were able to address those things, she was then able to show up with much more intention and be less worried about what other people were going to think of her. Just the way she had judged them, she was able to let go of some of that personal judgment and in doing so, be more free to share in the way that ultimately did matter to her. And that's again what that clarity does, that clarity of knowing why you want to share, what that bigger vision is, what that bigger goal is. It gives you a filter for what's important and what's not important. So what I ask you to do here is when you see things that give you that twinge of I should, just stop to question it. Is that should coming from deep within? In which case, great, because perhaps it's pointing you to some stuff that you do want to be doing over time. Or is that should coming from somewhere else, somewhere external, somewhere that is making you think that you should be doing these things, but actually those aren't quite the things that are meant for you. So take the time to do that. And a few questions that might really help you journal on this or think more deeply. The first one is, when I'm comparing myself to others, am I comparing myself to people whose vision I don't even share myself? And actually, let me give you a lovely example of this. We went to the most incredible 40th recently, and it was in this house that was spectacular. The views were absolutely to die for, and I love a good view. The pantry was laid out just like the home edit. And these are things that I love. You know, I talk about how much I love home related things. And I was able to really appreciate these things. I was able to say, I'm just blown away by what you've created here. Like, hats off to you guys, because I can appreciate the work that goes in. I know from personal experience how these things actually take a lot of thought and effort. So I was able to appreciate that effort. But I also know my personal vision. So I didn't need to directly compare myself to that and question what I was doing in comparison. So it was really joyful. I enjoyed being able to appreciate what they created without having to feel any sort of pangs of envy or ill feeling, I guess. The second one, am I using my energy on things that I don't actually care about anymore? I read a quote saying recently that the problem with goals is that it often means that we're doing activity in relation to things that our past self wanted. And that is the problem with setting just January goals and why we talk about doing resets and recalibrations throughout the year. But it might have been that we cared about this stuff in a previous decade or a previous version of ourselves, and now it doesn't matter quite so much. And so it's really important to take stock and reassess what matters to us now as we grow and evolve and enter different life stages. Another question: what would I say yes to more boldly if I knew exactly where I was headed to? And I really like this because sometimes the things that we're asked to do are not the easy things. They are things that might require a little bit more of us. But if we've done that clarifying work, we can spot the ones that are really going to make that difference and the ones that we can then boldly say yes to. So, to conclude, feeling behind is often a sign that there's something internal that needs attention. Not that you need to rush more or hustle more or fix anything overnight. It's an invitation or a nudge to come back to your own path. I hope that has been helpful for you. If you do want more resources to get more closely onto that path, I have my really accessible 3-day Vision Unblocked program. Within 3 days, you will walk away with so much clarity. It's specifically designed for busy people. So it's audio based and really small actions. But over the years, having worked with so many hundreds of leaders now, I know what those early steps are and the ones that differentiate those who do get that vision success from those who don't. And let me give you a spoiler alert. The people who have success with their visions aren't the ones with the best ideas or the cleverest. They're the ones that have put those basic building blocks and structures into place that support them to quietly build on that long term without blowing up the rest of their lives. So if that's of interest, the links for that will be in the show notes. And I look forward to connecting with you next time. Bye-bye.